You are listening to Inside IASB, a podcast series dedicated to informing and encouraging Illinois School Board members. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Isaac Warren, and I am the Director of Digital Communications at the Illinois Association of School Boards. And with me today, I'm welcoming back Chris Lawton, who is our Director of Information Technology here at the association. And we're going to be discussing AI, kind of making sense of its role in public schools. So, Chris, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Happy to be here.
All right. Well, let's just kind of start some groundwork here, because a lot of the biggest challenges right now with AI, I feel like it's just understanding the language around AI. So could you break down a couple of the key terms we keep hearing about, like generative AI, machine learning, large language models, in like a less technical way?
With AI in general, right, if we just think of the term AI, artificial intelligence, really is just any computer that's programmed to do something that we would generally or historically have considered a task that you needed a human to do, right? So driving a car, recommending a movie. So anything you think that a human previously would have been required to do. So then kind of under that, right, would be machine learning. So machine learning is just a specific way of programming something to learn from patterns. So machine learning is how Outlook or Google sends things to your spam folder, right? It looks for patterns like, oh, this has been said it's spam a lot. There's a pattern, right? So it's just a recognition of patterns. And when we talk about these other two things, right, they actually both fall under machine learning. So a large language model is just a specific type of machine learning that focuses on language. So it is given a lot of text, lots of words, lots of sentences, and it learns the patterns of sentences in language, right? So really that it is predicting what words come after other words based on lots of text where that happens. And so then generative AI, which not all generative AI is from large language models. The ones you think of like are the chatbots, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, where you can type into it and say, hey, what's this? And you get an answer back. Those are the large language model generative AIs. But generative AI just means an AI program that makes something that didn't exist before it made it, right? So it's anything that creates content that didn't previously exist. So you've got ones that create text, like we just mentioned. There's anything that creates an image, like Midjourney, right? You've got image AI generation. You've got music that can be from generative AI. You've got video that can be from generative AI. So anything that creates something that didn't previously exist.
Yeah, and I'm glad you broke down, like, it really is, at the end of the day, mostly about, it's a pattern recognition tool that kind of takes the input of the user and says, all right, based on this my training, I guess, on this source data, what is the most likely outcome of this? And I think it's almost a little disingenuous to say it's legitimate intelligence, because it really is just kind of predicting. I mean, I think the original AIs were called transformer models, where it really just took text input and just kind of guessed what the next likely word would be.
Right.
And just kind of kept going on and on. You could generate like Seinfeld scripts.
And it's just gotten better and better at it in some ways.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll talk some more about how that's, not necessarily in every way you might expect. Has it gotten better?
I mean, and a lot of the conversation around AI now is kind of swinging between like excitement and I kind of overhyping it, kind of overestimating what it can really do. So what would be something AI cannot do well that some might assume that it can?
There are some big ones for me that I think AI cannot do. And the biggest one to me is that AI cannot know things. You can ask AI a question about a current event. It does not know the answer. And you'll see, right, if you ask ChatGPT right now about something that happened yesterday, you'll see it's going to flash up searching the web. because it's just looking up the answer. It's using Google basically the same way that we all used to use Google before AI became how we search things, right? It can't know things. And because it can't know things, that's why it often gets things wrong. Another big thing that AI can't do is make decisions. There are, especially with chatbots, if you are asking a question that is talking about like a balance between two things, right? It is always going to like try to balance. It doesn't even like to try to make decisions. It likes to give you a balanced, there's this, but also this, and it rarely will go, no, this side is correct. It doesn't even like to make decisions that way.
I agree. And the decision-making part, I think, is also really important. I mean, famously, back in the day, when computers were first becoming mainstream, IBM said a computer should never be put in like a leadership position because a computer can't be held accountable for a decision that it makes. Kind of likewise, more so with AI. I mean, it's a bit more upfront because an AI kind of presents itself like it is a person in a way. And I think people get maybe a little blindsided, like, oh, this is it's like a person making decisions, but it's a machine. But you can't hold open AI in direct responsibility for a decision its chatbot made for your company.
Exactly. It's funny that you talk about it, that it kind of presents itself as a person. Outside of work, I like to use ChatGPT and Claude just for fun stuff, right? And I was talking to ChatGPT about a game, and it responds to me in a way that's something to the effect of, I love every time I see this. And I'm like, you've never seen it before. It talks like it has this history of doing things and having experiences. It doesn't. But it will respond like it does, which is just, it's trying to mimic like human behavior, but it doesn't have those experiences. And that all comes from, because that's how people have written things in the past. And its predictive model has said, respond like this.
Yeah, and I think that's way different from how, like, if you remember back to ChatGPT 2, when that was kind of like the first one where people were like, I can write a whole paper with this, and you can kind of do it pretty easily. I mean, these tools really do seem to appear overnight for a lot of people, and the pace of change since has been remarkable. So looking back when AI was first released, like ChatGPT 2, for example, how has your opinion of AI changed? What has been your biggest surprise or even letdown since then?
I would say my biggest surprise ties in with my biggest letdown at the same time. And that's that AI's ability to be factually correct has not improved. Yeah. It's actually gotten worse. As new models come out, there's more power behind them. They just make things up even more often. That, I think, has surprised me for sure. And it's definitely a disappointment to me. I mean, not a day where I use AI goes by that I don't have to correct it and tell it that is factually incorrect. And so it is just still not good at being necessarily right. I think that's a surprise. I think another disappointment would be maybe the way AI is hyped from the companies who create it, that it can do things and that it can make how much easier businesses and entities can do things. And I think all of it's overstated to a large degree.
I would agree. I think when it first came out, there was so much, the endless potential was kind of on the table, I guess, in a lot of people's minds because of how quick and easy it was to access. And I think a lot of people likened it to, like, again, when the computers first came out and they were an accessible way to do computing. And to your point that they really haven't gotten much better at, like, problem solving or, I guess, like, being truthful in what they're saying. I think a lot of that can also be attributed to the fact that when the first AI models came out, it was trained on very pure user-generated content. And now we're seeing that people are using AI to create their content now. So it's got like these like chunks that are AI generated, and now it's kind of refeeding AI generated stuff
Right.
back into retrain on. It's like, yeah, you're not really improving the quality of your training data.
No.
So of course you're going to have some entropy there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's a loop that has not made the improvements you would expect.
So kind of let's shift the focus a bit more towards the school part of AI. And as schools are, I'm sure, starting to explore AI more seriously, there are a lot of opportunities, but some uncertainty when it comes to how to best utilize that technology. So what would you say are the biggest risks or misconceptions when it comes to using AI in schools?
In terms of risks, I think the risk is not understanding how students learn when they're using AI. You can have situations where maybe AI is teaching a subject in a new way, but it doesn't represent a way that students actually learn well, right? They're seeing information maybe, but it's not a way where they absorb it and commit it to knowledge. So I think that's a potential issue. It's just not explored. So much of it is unexplored. Yeah. And so I think that's definitely, in terms of in the classroom, a concern and something to be cognizant of, that there are lots of AI learning programs for schools that are very, very interesting. Very, I think there's some good ideas and cool stuff that's out there, but how that translates into educational success, it's impossible to say. It hasn't been out long enough none of it has been available long enough to have a good read on, does that translate into better equipping students to be successful?
And honestly, I think we're still trying to figure out the best way to utilize devices in the classroom, like iPads and computers. That's still, in my opinion, that's still kind of an emergent technology that's still being figured out. Like, what's the best way to combine it with learning in the classroom where you're not just completely offloading all the work onto a computer or expecting students to, one, know how to use a computer. I mean, using an iPad is way different than using a computer. You've got file systems versus apps, and that whole distinction is it more important to teach a student how to use a file system on a specific operating system? Should they have general computing experience, or does it really matter? So I think those questions are still kind of up in the air, and now we're adding another layer of AI on top of it, and it's just really, that's a lot.
Exactly. It's a lot to consider. But I think you bring up an interesting point, and that's in what should the students learn, right? And so when we talk about computing, I remember when I was in high school and the computer classes that I took, I learned programs, some of which are still relevant today, some of which haven't existed since not long after I was in high school. I learned the principles, right? And the principles of those things, a lot of those things have carried forward. The principles of artificial intelligence today are totally different than when I was in school, because nothing like it existed when I was in school. But learning the principles of how it works is the important part. I think that is important. That a student can generate a paper in a matter of seconds is true, right? And look, if you've read something that ChatGPT has written, it looks like ChatGPT wrote it almost universally. Beyond that, there's things to learn on how to use AI as a tool there's value in, because it's not a question of if students are going to use it. They are. Maybe not for schoolwork, but they're going to use it in life. And so there's definitely value in learning how to use it, how to know it's correct.
I wish people would want to understand the kind of the mechanisms behind AI, like what is a transformer model? What is, how do you do training data? What is, using Python to create that training data and to create the resource, like how that all kind of works in the background. It's kind of like the equivalent of, here's the C directory of a computer, and here's where it stores computer information, how you can write programs that interact with your computer. I think that's kind of missing right now, because it's like, here's this tool, don't worry about how it works, it just does.
Well, and how it works is that specific knowledge is held by not very many people.
That's true. It's like a black box.
Right. It's new. People haven't studied it. So the people who know are the people who know. And we can have general ideas of how it works, right? And that's I think your point is knowing the basics of it. But even that's going to be something that interests some people, and it's going to be stuff that it's the person who doesn't want to take a computer programming class in school, but ending up in there anyways. That's a pretty big snooze fest on that. You're getting into pretty technical stuff that not necessarily everyone needs to know. There's reasons to know it that I think are maybe unrelated to education.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
More of a civics lesson.
Sure, yeah, right? I think that one area we definitely can't afford to get wrong is student data and privacy. That's a huge issue for school districts because it's very important and has a lot of legal weight behind it if something gets breached. So what should staff know before they paste student information or really anything into an AI tool?
Don't paste student information into an AI tool.
There you go.
No personal identifiable information should go into any tool that is connected to the internet in that way.
Yeah. And
that's not to say that information goes somewhere that anybody can access it. It doesn't generally, right? If you're not using a free version of any of these models, they're closed. They're not shared. The information is stored locally. My bigger concern in that is I think that the large AI companies are big targets for bad actors who want to steal data. And so my concern would be in when a data breach happens at one of those large companies, if you've put information in and it's just stored on some server somewhere, it getting out that way. I don't ever recommend that anyone ever put information in that way, and just especially not about kids. That's a prevailing point I would make to anyone when we talk about cybersecurity or artificial intelligence is the less you can open that up to the internet, the better.
A connected device to the internet is inherently an insecure device, no matter how many protections it has or claims to have. Same goes for AI. We're working on the good faith of these companies that they're doing their due diligence to secure our data.
And that due diligence, we rely on their due diligence, which I do. They know they're going to be a big target. So it's not that I believe they don't do their due diligence, but there's a lot of interdependencies in that chain. All the security that a company like OpenAI or Anthropic needs to have. Every data center that hosts their data that they don't necessarily own, right? They buy space. All of those have to have all their security up to date and up to par. Every piece of technology that they put into that data center, all those pieces of hardware need to have their firmware updated properly. And so all those interdependencies that constantly get updated. Think about Windows. There's an update for Windows. A lot of times every Monday there's a new Windows update. And it's often, not always, but often it's security patches. It's just, hey, we discovered a little hole that needs to get plugged. All of those different pieces in that chain have those, and we're counting on them to make all those updates every time they come out right away. So there's just a lot of possibilities of stuff getting lost that way.
Sure. I mean, again, chain is as strong as its weakest link, and this is a very, very long chain of dependencies. And, I think I hopefully most people know nowadays that hacking is. Nowadays, hacking, I don't think is the way that you see it in like the old movies where like just someone in a computer den, they're like hacking away.
Clicking away on a keyboard furiously.
With like a hood on. It's social engineering most of the time, or somebody accidentally left a default configuration open.
It's a program running.
Yeah.
Usually it's a person doesn't have to sit at the computer even to do it. It's a program that's running, just trying things.
So, I mean, all it takes is just someone to have something misconfigured by accident, not even on purpose, just an accident. Now you've got an attack vector, and it's kind of like that's how it is. Yeah. So again, yeah, kind of goes back to what I would always just assume. Whatever you're putting in there, someone else could probably read it. If you work on that way, I think that prevents a lot of potential personally identifiable information being entered, being even considered to be entered.
I think that's spot on.
And we both serve on our internal AI committee here. You lead it actually at the association, and we've had a lot of intriguing discussions with our group when it comes to advising our association on the best practices for AI and how it should best be used at ISB. If you were advising a school board or a superintendent, what would be 3 things that they should understand or consider before adopting any AI tool?
I think that you definitely want to consider, nobody in today's world wants to read a terms of service when they agree to use a software. But I would definitely, for anything you're considering using, find out what happens to the data. Where's it go? And making sure that no models are then training on said data. You don't want that to be the case. Now, generally, anything that you actually pay for, that's not going to happen. But I would still definitely be aware of that. For any AI program, I'd also consider ways that it could potentially be used that it's not meant to be. Something that's large in its scope, like just Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini. There's no real narrowed scope of what those can do. Using something like Claude at a school, I would want to have something really well defined about how it's meant to be used. There's any number of things you could do, and it's not necessarily what you want to be doing with it. So that's another thing. And I would want to consider how staff is going to be trained on using it. I think that's important, so that in case they didn't hear this podcast, they know not to put student data into a chatbot or any generative AI, really.
I think our knee-jerk reaction would be, let's make a whitelist of all the acceptable AI tools you can use. But they just change so much.
Yeah.
There's just not almost a point.
You couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah, you couldn't. There's always new stuff. And the thing is with AI, people can vibe code, which is, they sit in front of a prompt and have the AI write the whole program for them from start to finish. They can vibe code an entire project and then say, like, here's my new AI startup.
Right.
But they probably don't have the technical know-how of how to manage a startup or how to manage a large project like that.
Or how to fix it when something goes wrong.
Yeah, they go poof, like within a month.
Right.
So not only knowing how to use the technology, but verifying that this is a trustworthy source. It has backing from a major company like Google. Typically, those are going to last at least a little bit. You'd hope probably a lot longer than a no-name. Who is this cool specific tool, but no prior knowledge, no prior history, don't know really much about the company. I'd be very cautious about utilizing that or paying some sort of lifetime license for your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the type of things that here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah. And as much as we're dealing with AI in the present, it's very clear that we're just at the beginning of a longer journey. I mean, we have seen AI models be open sourced, which in my opinion is like, that's the threshold for this is not going away. If you can open source a technology, it's going to become easier to use. It will become more widespread to use, and companies will use open source projects usually as a starting point.
Sure.
In a lot of cases. So AI is not really going anywhere for a while. So looking ahead at the next couple of years, and if we can, what is a change being driven by AI that schools might not be preparing for, but probably should be?
If we think back to the 90s, there was a big debate about whether or not students should use internet in the schools, have access to it. And today we would think that was a crazy thought. That's just as common as textbooks. I think that thinking that this is just a new software, do we use it, do we not, is maybe the wrong approach. It's more about creating a plan for using it in a specific way, right? And I think that it can't take the place of teachers. It doesn't know things. Teachers do know things. It doesn't take the place of reading a great work of fiction. It can't create anything on that scale. You can't get the same thing. You can ask ChatGPT to write you a great fantasy story. It is not ever going to give you the Lord of the Rings. But not assuming that this is gonna, like you said, gonna be a flash in the pan thing that fades away quickly. It's not going to be. I think it's just having some understanding of what it does, what it is, what it does, and really being prepared to teach you how to use it responsibly. But also not buying into the hype of any one software.
And like over relying on it almost. I mean, I think this has been compared a couple of times, as I've seen online. There's a Twilight Zone episode of this guy who finds one of those fortune telling machines, and it's right. And it does tell him like what to do kind of. And he becomes almost completely, and he runs his entire life based on what the output of this machine is. And I think at the end of the episode, it just breaks. And he's completely distraught because he feels like he can't live his life anymore.
Right.
But he really is just going back to the way it was supposed to be in the first place.
Right. Not having a reliance on it.
And that was over 70 years ago, but I think it's something that strikes a bit closer to home now more than it probably did back then.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's an important thing to follow that up about AI. It's really bad at making predictions.
It is, yeah.
For being something that the entire premise of how it works is it predicts what comes next.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to actual future events, it is terrible at it.
As someone who used AI last year to seed my fantasy roster, I can attest to that. That was a mistake.
That was
pretty bad.
That was poor planning on your part.
That was really, really bad, yeah. Well, Chris, thanks so much for coming on the podcast to talk about AI and how it relates to schools and what school boards could be thinking about if AI does come up or when it does come up in conversation about making decisions around it. I think it's a fledgling technology. It's new. It's always changing, but it's still something that boards need to be able to respond to, especially if there's concerns or parents or students have questions about what is this role in our lives as members of our district. And, these are just really important factors to consider, and it helps to have a good foundation of what this technology even is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Isaac, to have what, in my opinion, is the start of an important conversation.
I agree. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the podcast, and thank you for your dedicated volunteer service to public education. If you would like to stay up to date with future episodes, please consider following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or your platform of choice. Have a comment or question? We welcome listener feedback and invite you to send us an email at communications@iasb.com. Thank you.